A lot of people like you and me, especially those people who were born in the internet generation, rely a lot more on our mobile applications and news media such as on YouTube and other websites to access or the world news more than relying on the mainstream corporatized news media. And the reason for this, at least in my opinion, is pretty simple, is that I want to access the different perspectives of a particular story. You see, bias is not something that we can eliminate. I guess it has always existed, it exists now, and will continue to exist. The only thing that's a problem today is that back in those days, there was not a lot of ways you can access world news, and back in those days, it was just sufficient to just deliver facts and figures. But today, I mean, especially the mainstream news media has to deliver stories by making up a worldview or a lens through which they ask you to look at, and that's a kind of bias. So this bias is not inherently wrong, but the point of this video is to help you, is to make something that allows people and consumers of that medium to visualize those bias and make a informed decision on what to take from that piece of content. So, for instance, a journalist talks about a very controversial story on something, then that moral lens has to be visualized. And how do you visualize that? In this video, we'll be creating a web application, but I hope something like this could be systemized for other mediums as well. You could take an inspiration from this. So the thing that we're gonna make today is gonna work is that we're gonna make a web application that presents journalists or individuals or anybody, especially those people who are in charge of making news and shaping new perspectives, to go through the set of questionnaires with no absolute judgments on what is right and what is wrong. And when you go through those questionnaires, there will also be a set of pointing system, licensing system, or referencing system, or some kind of system that goes on the back end to formulate, okay, so you have a questions on what do you believe in is the most important causes in the world today. So you can add all those causes and you can define how much important is any cause. For example, climate change or whatever it is, you can assign a different set of priorities and add them to your profile. That profile will then be used for you to share it on to social media, your website, your company website, or wherever else that is necessary, so that other people can go to your website and see, okay, well, here is a licensing or some kind of system where I can see, okay, click on that button and that will take you to their page in their website, where, okay, so this is what they believe in. They believe that the climate change is not important. So when you read any article on their website about climate change, that is the climate change is hoax or whatever it is. Now, by no means am I making any kind of uh, judgment here, but I'm just illustrating that with an example. You can make an informed decision on whether or not you want to take that particular article how seriously ever you want to. So that's what the video is about. If you want to make this application, I just like to add one simple point before I proceed with the developing of this project. So I'm going to be using Bubble to develop this website, and I'm going to be using absolutely no programming to develop this website. And the way it's possible is using a visual programming tool. Is that it's by using visual programming. So for instance, we first build a user interface, and then we tell what these buttons have to do using simple logic that we can just define using step 1, step 2, and step 3. It just goes like that. So more on that in the latter part of this video. But to give you one small instruction before we proceed, no matter to which side of the political spectrum you belong, like left, right, or center, or whatever, I would ask of you to just keep your uh, political inclinations on the background, because what's gonna happen is, especially when you're making these applications, there are dozens of different ways you can create this application, but I'm gonna create questionnaires, and you want both sides of the political spectrum to access this solution. And in order to do that, what's gonna happen is that you shouldn't really put in your political bias in the questionnaires. Now, for instance, if you are someone who inclines towards right, please do not use words such as "Do you care about illegal immigration?" or "Do you care about polar bears?" or something like that. You're indirectly referring to people who care about climate change and all of that. And same goes for the other side of the political spectrum as well. So, no matter to which side of the political spectrum you belong to, uh, just kindly respect each other, and we hope to have a better understanding of different people. So that's what this video is about, and I hope this solution will be as helpful for others, or at least you can take some inspiration and build something on top of this. Okay, so let's start with the project now. Go to bubble.io, create a new project, and I'm going to call this visual political bias. Now, you can't really have spaces, so let's go ahead and give it some hyphens and start the project. Now, one thing to remember, again, if you don't have any experience with Bubble, there's a link in the description to my Skillshare course where you can get started. So I'm going to start with no template and build the boring part, which is just the login stuff. So I'm going to move a little fast in this part here. I'm just going to create a group and have a basic design sort of laid out. So I'm going to have two sections, login and sign up, put up in two different groups here. So I can know when I'm designing the workflow which component is for which. Okay, so first one is gonna be for login. So I'm gonna put up the heading here. I'm gonna call it login, and the first step is just to get the UI done. Okay, so I'm gonna put that heading there. Choose a style there, and I'm gonna put up a first input box here, which is going to be for the email. And when you type in email, automatically the content format changes to email, which is kind of interesting. And you want to call this password. The second one, you can just duplicate it, or you can drag and drop another one. I'm gonna drag and drop a login button here, and I'm gonna rename this to login. And I'm going to resize this box because I have just too much space here. And let's finish the login part here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add the login, and then I'm going to plug in those input boxes to this. Again, all of this is being covered in my workflows, in my Skillshare tutorial. So if you want to understand how this works, again, in depth, you can watch my Skillshare video. So it's going to be the same thing on the sign up form, except the only difference is that we're going to have the name field. So let me just quickly just change that with different values. I'm just going to duplicate the login field, and I'm just going to change a couple of styles. Like for this login, I'm going to change the login text to sign up, and then I'm going to change this email to your email, because that makes a lot of difference and makes it easy for me to design my workflows. So I'm going to push these two fields down to make space for my other field here. So I'm going to add the your name field. Now, I'm actually narrating this video, and I don't know if you can see, but so basically, I don't know if you can see that your name field is actually, if you see the content format is email, make sure the content format is exactly as what you want it to be. So, for instance, if you want the email to be email, then choose the content format as email. And for name, just keep it as a standard text. So I'm going to change the login button text to sign up, and that's it, I guess. Now we're gonna change the heading to sign up for an account. I'm gonna resize this. And I guess we're done with the sign up UI. Now let's go ahead and create a workflow for sign up. Okay, so I'm gonna plug in those two fields here, and voila. Yeah, yeah, now voila. Yeah, that was done. So we're gonna have one more field, which is the name. I'm gonna add that value from the data set because I just don't wanna like come back to this again to the sign up part because it's boring. Now again, you can't use this for basically authorization, but you can save this information on your database and use this for the profiles because you're gonna display the names. You can add a profile picture if you want to. Again, this is a very basic version. So now from this page, we'll go into the dashboard page where the user will be able to manage this. I'm going to call this dashboard, but you can call it whatever you want. You can clone the template of this from anything. I don't know, maybe you can call it account, maybe you can call it manage. I think manage is a better word. So I'm going to resize this again. Guys, anything that you see in this video is just a basic rudimentary version. I hope you guys would spend time and redesign this application to look a lot more presentable. So now the first thing I would need is a group because, well, I would need to have a, you know, let's put up a solid border here, and this is going to be for the card that I'm going to have. So these are all the questionnaires or all the values that we have in our thing. So for example, climate change and all that stuff, we'll be presenting that in the card, and I'm going to have a shadow as soon as I hover onto this. I'm going to have a border to it, and we'll have a beautiful shadow hovering, coming out of it as soon as we hover onto it. So that's what we're doing from the styles menu for this component. And yeah, so this card will have all the components that we need for every single card. And let me preview and show you what this looks like. Um, so if you just hover onto this, you can see the beautiful shadow that's coming, so it could feel like a card. Now, don't worry, we're gonna put this inside a list. So, but for now, it's okay. Let's go ahead and put this in the center, but let's finish this card up. So we're gonna have the question part, which is gonna ask a question. Okay, what do you think about whatever it is? Again, think about your questions, options, and also how you're gonna grade these points. Because the in this video, again, let's go ahead and choose a header style. Now, again, in this video, the first part of this video and what I'm actually ready with is only going to be okay. Questions gonna come up, and then it's gonna ask you questions. It's gonna present you with a couple of options, and you can choose a answer. No, I don't think so. Repeating list is a thing. I'm gonna use a drop down list because that's where you're gonna choose the answer. First thing is the comments box, so the user can add additional comments to this question. The thing is that in this in the first part of the video, I'm only going to ask the user to enter the value, and then I'm gonna just present whatever he entered. But behind the workflows, you can actually collect some data, and like based on any input, you can add points or whatever it is. And we're gonna do that in the next part of the video, which is well, I'll inform you about that. Well, let's go ahead and add a drop down as well, because that's where the options are going to be present. And this is where the answers for this question is. Again, there's no such thing as a right or wrong answer, but maybe you want to grade those. So in this video, the first part of the video is only going to be just presenting the information. So I'm going to choose the first thing is a question. The below is the thing, the drop down, and the below that is the multi-line input where you can type in questions. And I'm going to add a group as well. Just because, well, I'm going to add, if you want to present your question with images, you can do so. I'm going to center this horizontally. And this images will be fetched from the database, so we're gonna add those questions later. Yeah, I mean, you may ask where can we add these questions. Now you can actually create a specific front end for yourself, but ideally you can add those back end. Add those questions from your database backend, which I'll show you. So we'll add add a button that allows you to add this or save this information to your profile. Now this is where the user will be able to edit the profile. Now nobody else apart from the person who's logged in and who's the owner of this account will be able to access this page. So logged out users won't be able to access this page. Now we're gonna nest this card inside of the list or the repeating group, so that we can display a list of items here. So I'm gonna put this right inside, plug this inside the box there. So let's pull this down there, and you should see the clue over on the bottom. So as you can see here, let's choose the repeating style, repeating what do you call this? Repeating groups style. Let's alter this because right now it's not aligned properly. So I'm gonna align this vertically and horizontally, and then I'm gonna choose the style as solid, and I'm gonna make this a little lighter and not make that too obvious. So make this little on the gray side, and then I'm gonna choose the whole repeating group and add a border to it just because it looks better that way. I mean, it still doesn't look cool, but you know what? It kind of looks presentable, at least more than that. So, I guess we're done with that. Now let's go ahead and not really, actually. But let's go ahead and change this to extended vertical scrolling. What it means is that the whole page will scroll when you scroll down this list. Otherwise, if you select the vertical scrolling, you have to go to inside that repeating group part and then scroll down in order to scroll down the list. Now I'm going to choose welcome, comma, followed by the person who's logged in. I'm going to address by his name. So for example, if your name is John, it will say welcome, welcome, comma, John, and whatever is your name. So yeah, and we're gonna add another button for logout. Actually, later we'll be needing a button to view your profile. But for now, because we have not created that page yet, so I'm not do that. I'm gonna choose a different style for this, because logout shouldn't really be too much, like standing out too much. So I'm gonna place this over there, and um, yeah, one more thing is that since the space shouldn't be accessible by the people outside. Oh yeah, and you need to choose that the group should have an image. So well, let's choose an image style and then add that. I mean, the image is going to be fetched from the database, so don't worry about that. So now let's start with the values, which is the stuff that the people will be adding to their profile. The first thing we'll be needing is the caption itself, which is the text, okay, the question itself, and the type is text, single value, so don't need to select multiple value. The other things are, well, comments, and we'll be needing some image, which is like, in this case, will be graphics, and also like the type is image. Again, we're gonna take these values and we're gonna create another type called user values, which is what is going to be presented on the profile. But this is where we'll be adding the question. So these are question values. So we're gonna have the comments. We're gonna have a bunch of um, answered. So which is going to be who are the people who answered this question. So we're gonna keep track of that, because the reason we want to keep track of that is so that if we can store who are the people who answered that, and if the person who logged in is already answered that, then we have to kick that option out, so we can't show that option again. So we're just plugging our elements to this user type. The screen group will display all of the values, and we don't want to display all the items that already exist in, I mean, the questions that already have been answered by this user. So type of the content should be user, because we're gonna go back to the login now and tell them the workflows that when the user is being logged in, you want to send the current user. Current user again refers to the person who's logged in. If all this sounds too complicated, maybe you want to check out the Skillshare course. Yeah, so basically what we want to say is in the repeating list, you want to say that you don't want to display all the items where the answer actually does not contain I mean, yeah, what it means is that we don't want to show all the bunch of things that I've already answered. So that's what this whole thing is about. So again, the type of the content is values. I'm going to display the current cell's value for this in the group, and then I'm going to plug in the values from the data set. And then for the image, I'm going to get the dynamic image from the parent group's graphics. So for this drop down, I'm going to actually show caption. You can pause this video and see for yourself. This is just basically displaying all the bunch of options that we have. So in the add option, now let's go ahead and figure this out. Now what you need to do is you need to create something called user values. Because this is going to be the stuff that we're going to save and present on the profile. So we're gonna pretty much copy the same thing that we did with the user, I mean the values thing, except we're gonna not keep track of the options that are available because you don't really need to show what are the options that were available. You just need to show what is the thing that he answered. So that's gonna be highlighted with the selected part. So when we're gonna go to the add button here, what we want to do is, oh well, let's see, we have not added the comments part, which is also text again. So every instance of this of user values will have all these values, and let's plug in the user values as the first thing that we want to create. So we're gonna add the caption, comments, graphic, and this. So the values will come from different places. The graphics, I'm just gonna take the value that is in this current um, parent group's values caption. The same caption that comes from there, I'm going to take that and copy that into the user values. But the comments is going to come from the user, which is from the multi-line drop down. Graphic, I'm just going to copy that from the current cells thing. And then the selected, which is the option he selected, which is going to come from the drop down, so which is the answer that he chose. Again, no judgment, it's a simple text. So and yeah, maybe one more thing you want to do is you want to make changes to the current cell's value, and when I say answered, add current user. Now this is a list of items. Now what this does is that this allows me to see, if you see in the repeating group, it says you don't want to display all the questions that have already been answered by the current user. Now we want to create the profile page here, and it's very similar to the manage page. But before we do that, um, actually, okay, you know what? Let's create the profile page from actually manage thing itself. And in here, obviously, you don't need to show the button and the form. Now, instead of the form, you'll display a text and all the values that he selected. So let's go ahead and choose. The first part is the answer that he chose from the drop down. So what we'll do is we'll change the group thing to from values to user values, because now we're presenting the answer. So what is the answer you selected? Created by is equal to current page user. So that is, now this page can actually can be anybody else's profile. So if it's your profile, it will show your profile. So you can actually share this with the URL, so with your link. And so yeah, we're gonna first thing we're gonna display the comment. So actually in Bubble, if you want to display some text in bold, you have to use this kind of formatting. So you can say colon, and the next line we can display dynamic data, which is coming from the database. We can show the comments, but let's sort of add the comments text in bold. So we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to duplicate this with giving it enough space. Um, just like the comments, we're going to display the answer that you chose in the drop down. So instead of comments, let's change the text to answered, or whatever you want to. Again, like I said, this is like a pretty bad way of presenting information, but it's okay. So I have the answered there. So I think we have the let's use no, I think the styling is not good, so undo that. And probably I think we've gained a lot of space, so let's kind of reduce the space, and let's horizontal align and center align this, and maybe give it some less space because I have just too much space left. And I'm gonna center this vertically again. Um, and I guess I'm going to go back to this page here. And when I say I'm logged out in the manage page, you should go throw me back to the index page. And the reason I didn't do that, I actually did that before I cloned, is because in the profile page, people can visit this page even if they're not logged in. And in the profile page, you want to display actually the person's name. You don't want to say welcome, because you're welcome, but again, here in this case, it's not really uh, they're not really logged in, so it's not necessarily okay. So we're gonna go back to the manage page here, and actually I forgot to remove the logout button because it's not necessary. Again, welcome. Now we can change uh, the the name to be in bold similarly, and change the page title to presenting the name of the profile in the profile page, and probably account some reasonable text or meta information in the page information. So yeah, so let's go ahead and go back to the data here and add a couple of questions, because if we're going to preview this, we're going to have no questions whatsoever. So let's do that, and then let's add a new entry, and yeah, we have a lot of questions here. So let's add the first questions. Do you believe in climate change? Maybe. So I know this is just two big questions, but it's okay. And I'm gonna add a couple of options. Yes, and this one is gonna be no. This is a straightforward question. Um, that's gonna be available in the drop down. Don't worry if it's not showing up in real time, because it's not really a real time database, so it's okay. Just refresh this page and you can check it out over here. It's okay. You can again edit this information later. Each entity in Bubble is actually identified using something called a unique ID that you just saw in the previous entry. So we can have one more question. So we can say maybe, what is your opinion on child advertising? Again, these are just dumb questions maybe, but my agenda is only to show you guys how to build a tech. So please don't judge me if these are like they're good questions to ask or not. That's really not the point of this video. So we're gonna add a couple of options. Again, if you are interested in grading these answers and say, okay, if you choose this answer, then you want something else to happen, or if you want to present with a couple of images, or you want to show all these things, you have a separate section for that. So just hold on to it. If you just want to show the options and allow the user to select it and just visualize the information, you can just do this. Options are just a bunch of text. Um, here are a couple of options I'm adding here about you can also add a couple of images if you want to, but I'm just gonna move on to this. So far so good. Let's go ahead and preview this page here, and let me show you that when you're editing this page, make sure that you are editing on the live version before publishing it. Right now, when you're actually publishing it, make sure that the database and the entry for development version and the live version is completely different, and I don't know what the stupid bugs are. Actually, I will get rid of this. These are You can just delete this and just do undo. It will come back and the error will just go away. So just delete these components and it will go away. Delete this component and then press the redo button that is over there. Just to mind these issues and not really problems. Okay, so here we are on the logged in. So as you can see the drop down showing the correct drop down here. And if I click on add some comments, like I value sites, and click on add, that question no longer showing. So as you can see, we have answered all the questions, but there's a problem. We can't really view the profile here. So we're gonna do it the hacking way. Oh shit, this is not the right profile. Um, Alright, I guess we need to show the profile button. So let's go back to manage and give it some space and add a button here to preview our profile. So let's duplicate this button and call it my profile. Um, so we can display the profile of the person who's logged in. Just ignore these issues, okay? We'll get rid of them. Um, Let's click on go to a page, and we're going to show the profile page, and we're going to display the current user's data. And current user again is the person who's logged in. So you click on this my profile button, and now it can show you all the answers. And as you can see on the top there, it shows administrator, which is the name of this user. So pretty cool, right? So that's about how you can visualize all these answers. But actually, if you don't want to display the comments, if the person has not entered comments, you can click on conditions and say if the value is empty, you don't want to show this, so you can do that as well. Um, Something else maybe is one thing to do is you can create a new type called options. Actually, if you like I said, the options are just plain text, but if you want to actually add judgments or more stuff to this option thing here, as it says, a list of text. Now you can expand upon this and make this a different data set and actually connect this and be a subset of values type. So you can do that as well. This is optional again, let me tell you. So value reference is the person like the is like this is an option entry. So every option entry will be tied to a value item. So say caption, which is the actual item entry. So every instance there. Now I'm gonna go to the profile here, and I'm going to say go to the profile thing. Again, I'm just redoing the same thing again. Oh well. I think in this case I need to add a share profile button because in the profile page, alright, I did a mistake. I'm gonna add a pop-up here in this page. In this section, I'm gonna add a simple text that says you can share this profile. In the manage page, you need the my profile button, but you don't really need a my profile button in your own profile because that doesn't really make sense. So you can share your own profile or whoever's profile. Let's make this a little presentable, and maybe yeah, like that, and then we're gonna center this, and we're going to show the URL or the link to this page, and we're also going to show a bunch of links to share this to their respective social media or mail or other networks. Alright, so I'm going to give this placeholder some text, so I'm going to say copy or um, profile link maybe, and for the I'm going to give it some space there, and maybe um, I'm going to add a button to copy paste it. Um, Actually, I don't think so. I need it. Because I think it's better to create a social media button instead. Like that would be a lot more useful than giving a copy to link button. Um, you know what? Let's go ahead and it looks cool. This actually looks cool. So in the input box, you want to display the current page users link that refers to. I'm going to say send them to the profile option. What this is doing is that it basically is going to show the a link to this page, which is the option we're reading. I'm gonna add this a plugin called Add to Any. Just search for this plugin, and this will allow you to share any string of text or anything to your social media profiles. And I'm gonna add something called Add to Any. Install that for your plugins, and click on Done, and just choose that share button and then select it, and you can add whatever social media you want. You allow your user to add them to, so you can add them there, and make this give this some enough space there. And like I said, so you can allow whichever social media you want. You can also give it some generic thing there, so they can also share this on WhatsApp and whatever else. It also gives you the option to share on Google Plus, but just so you know, Google Plus doesn't exist anymore, so it's not really up to date. So say the page name is whatever is the name of the thing, and for the URL, you want to take the value from the value that is in the input box up there. So you can also get the value again, the URL destination, but that's really not unnecessary because you already have the value up there. So you can just take the value of the input box about and then just share that value to that. That's an easier way to do it, just say easy. And you don't really need to have a close button, but because you can, if you just click on anywhere outside of the pop-up, then it just closes anyways. So I'm going to show that pop-up when you click on that pop-up button, um, which is over here. And let's go back here and then preview this. Now if you go to anybody's profile here, again this is some random profile, but you can see their link there, so you can share this to any social media and it should work. That's it. This is how you can create a place where people can share in their visual media, I mean their social media, I mean their biases, and they can answer questions. Now this is an optional step, but for those people who want to grade some things and add some additional properties, you want to add another drop down and choose the, you want to create a type called options and value reference, and if you want you can add images and all that stuff. Again, so there's one option type which is for values and one called user options, which is what we're going to show on the profile. So for the user profile, we're going to have a very similar thing to the option, except instead of tying this up to value reference, we'll call this user value reference, and the type will be the user value. So field type will be caption again. We're going to take these values from the just standard option text. If this is just too complicated, maybe this is a little, it's going to be a little hard for those people who are doing Bubble for the first time, and I can understand. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comment section below, and I'll try to help them out. Again, this is optional, guys. So again, option. So I'm gonna choose user options for this. Now what I'm doing here is I am going to show a bunch of options under there. So I'm going to add a button here. Um, well. We're going to we'll create a new user option. Okay, and I'm going to take the value that is in the drop down and I'm going to store that onto the user option. And the other thing I want to do is, okay, well there's a problem, and as you can see here there is no value, so let's go ahead and choose the type of option as option. Let's go back to the option here. Well, I think it looks cool, so let's go back here. Let's say maybe say parent groups things. um, Yeah, wait. I'm gonna display the do a search for options. We want to display all the options where the value reference is the parent group's video. So that's basically choosing all the options which is from the same value that is of this one. So we're gonna add a value reference every time we add a option there. So value is basically whichever value there. So we're going to take the caption value from this and then store it back there. So for the for this I'm going to choose the caption, and I'm going to take the value from the drop down and I'm going to save it over here. So that's it there, and I'm also going to save the value user value reference, which is again from the step one. So we already created that in the first step, which is the user value, and I'm gonna save this caption or this user option to the user value, and that's how this option is tied to this user option. So if you go back to this page here, and in this answer here, like last time we just displayed the text there, I'm gonna say I'm going to display, well, let's go back here and just check it out here for a second. In the user values, we had the options, which is just displaying a random text. But now we're going to display user options, which is because we had it over here. Now, something to remember is that we also need to um, keep track of, well, I'm gonna make changes to the parent group's value. Okay, I'm gonna say that the um, options will add um, result. Oh, no, wait, hold on a second. What am I doing? Um, no. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying that, well, I know I need to create the option chosen so I don't show that option again. So when I choose that option, okay, which is the option that I chose um, by the user, we want to create the same thing back in the user options also. So in this user values, I'm gonna say options add. So because we don't want to display that value again in the thing there. So um, I'm gonna say, because we're gonna display the user values item in the user values page in the profile page. So you want to store um, a list of options that he chose, and from the options that he chose we can fetch the value there, and then we can take that value and then say if the user value and this user option is matching, then display that text in the profile page. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I guess so what I'm doing is I'm saying in the step 2 we created a user option, and that user option should be added onto this list so we can keep track of all the options that this user chose. And yeah, so basically again, so that's what we're doing is we're keeping track of all the options that this person chose. So that's not going to be a single item, that's going to be a list of items. So again, my mistake there, so it's user options, and make sure it is a multiple list, because we're going to keep track of all the options that he chose. Again, that option, the previous options that we chose, is totally useless because we're not doing that right now. So we can add the user, the thing that we did in the second part, and we can go to the profile and display the answer that he chose, which is parent groups users, the option that he chose in the user options, caption. So caption is where the answer is stored. So I hope this is clear, and as you can see here, there's no bugs whatsoever. So because you want to test this out, we don't really have any questions, and back then the options were just plain text. So now we have a bunch of values here, which is a questions here, and we want to remove all the data that we have so far. So let's go back to user values. This is all the options, all the things that we did. Just delete everything now because you want to test something out now. So also go back to maybe options. This is all the options that are available. So if you preview this for a second, I want to show you something. Um, if you go back to edit profile, you can see these questions, but you can't really see the drop down because those options are not really showing up. Um, and I'll tell you why. But before we do that, we need to add a value reference. And value reference is every option needs to be tied to a value. So how do we take this value? Now we can remove all the people who have answered this question. So we want to get these options. You can just keep it for reference, but take this unique ID here. Just copy this, okay? Because you want to keep because every option will be tied to a question. So we're gonna have this option here called shouldn't be encouraged, and we're gonna take that to this question here, and we're gonna confirm it. Again, if you're publishing it, make sure you're in the live mode and add this question, because again you have to do the same thing again. So we're gonna add another option to the same question, which is the same value, and you can test this live. If you go to the next tab, you'll be able to see these options showing up there. um, Oops, I forgot to add the value reference there, so just copy paste that, and then that's it. So you want to add one more maybe. maybe to say I completely reject this, and I'm gonna add the value reference. And if you refresh this, no, I don't really see the thing. Oh, I can see it on the back end. What's the problem? Um, looks everything looks okay. You can pause this video and check it out. Um, okay, everything looks cool. Mm. Again, guys, those people who are not able to follow, you can just stop with the list of text. If this is just too complicated, it's okay. You don't really need to do all this stuff. Um, for those people who want to create a license-like thing, you need to keep track of more information than just the thing that he chose. Why is this not showing up? Let's go back to data here. To all the values. Maybe, oh, look at there. Because we look, the person who's answered this question is a current user, so he's not allowing to edit this thing. So as you can see now, we have these options here because this is the question to which we had tied up all these options to. So let's click on add and let's go back to our profile, and as you can see here, there you go. So you can add more attributes to these options, and especially to this user option here, attribute here, and keep track of things like, is it a left wing, is it a right wing, or whatever it is. Now, these are some things that you can do with user values. Again, user values and user options are the things that is being copied to your profile, so you can do whatever you want to. So you can choose, you can add a score, or whatever it is. Now, as if you like this video, again, thank you guys for watching, and I shall see you guys in another video very soon.